Thank you, everybody, for joining us on another session of ACE Learns. My name is Elise Cogburn. I work here at ACE as Partnership Development Outreach Manager. I am really excited for this session we have this week, kind of going along with our wildlife theme from last month. We have Zach Burke joining us to talk all things owl, which I am very excited about. So without further ado, I will flip it over to Zach to introduce himself and lead us on this journey.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, I guess. I'm Zach. I'm from central Pennsylvania. Like a lot of you, I kind of grew up hiking around and fishing, catching salamanders and snakes and stuff. That eventually led me to going to college at the University of Pittsburgh to study ecology and evolution. Since then, I've worked in New Mexico, California, actually back home in Pennsylvania, and now finally in Montana as mostly a wildlife technician. And the focus primarily has been on owls, but I'll get into that right now. My first job out of college, this was 2023, not too long ago. I worked with the Bird Conservancy of the Rockies, which is a cool nonprofit. They do a lot of bird monitoring, population monitoring. And this was my first foray into owls. I thought it was interesting. It seemed like the coolest job that I got, that I was offered. And really, it was a population survey looking at the criteria for delisting these owls. So they're considered a federally threatened species, and there's been 10 years now, probably 12 or 13, of monitoring to see if they qualify for delisting. We were all over New Mexico. It was really cool. It was my first time in the state. I miss it a lot, actually. It's pretty awesome. But we were in every national forest in the state. So from one time or another, I was down almost in Mexico, almost in Colorado. Saw a huge range of habitats, and basically it was a grid system. We had to hit a few points, and then based on the size of the grid, they could approximate how many owls there are, really. Here's just a little couple pictures from my camera roll of the difference in New Mexico habitat. And both of these places would have spotted owls, crazily enough. They like canyons, they like deep forest. And the way we find the owls, this was my introduction to playback surveys. So we'd head out with a big speaker with the owl calls loaded on there. And around this time, this April through June, they're breeding, they're super territorial. And when they hear another owl calling in their territory, they come in and call back um, pretty frequently, So we had to visit these sites a couple times to make sure that we were getting all the owls using that area, but it's pretty consistent in effectiveness. And then before I moved past New Mexico, I just wanted to pop up some of the pictures I came across digging around. You run into a lot of cool stuff doing these surveys. It's kind of the best part of the job. And then that fall, 2023, I moved into a little more of the scientific side, I guess, of research. And that was at Hawk Mountain. That's back in Pennsylvania. It was one of the original raptor research, yeah, nonprofits in the world. Definitely nonprofit, but even just communities, I would say. But it started off, people would use this ridge to hunt raptors, to shoot them. There was a bounty at the time on a lot of birds of prey. Eventually, word got around to this philanthropist, Rosalie Edge. She was super into birds. She bought up the whole place. She turned it into a hawk watching sanctuary. And from that time on, I believe 1928-ish, um, they've been counting raptors there migrating south. So they have a huge data set. It's pretty cool. There's a ton of great researchers there. And then for me, um, yeah, learning research techniques, participating in the count. So heading up dawn to dusk, you're up there counting raptors. It was cool. There's a lot of visitors. There's some areas for people to go check out. So that's a lot of what I did, was interacting with visitors. And then I did conduct an independent project. But identification, I thought I was good at identification until I went to Hawk Mountain. Um, and then I realized that there's levels to this stuff quite a bit. But it's one thing to see a bird perch there and you get to look at your field guide, and figure out what it is. But this is a lot of the time you're just seeing kind of a little black speck in your binoculars, and you gotta figure out just more by the shape and how it flies what it actually is. Handling. So this is the fun part for all of us for sure. I mean, all of it's fun, but the handling and banding is really cool to see these birds up close. You'll see up top we have the northern saw-whet owl. That was the first bird I ever banded. Lucky enough. Yeah, and that won't be the last time that saw-whets come up in this presentation either. If anyone's from the East Coast, we caught a goshawk while I was there, which is pretty uncommon. They're endangered in Pennsylvania, so that was a cool one. Owl surveys. I don't have owl pictures from then, unfortunately, but some of the cool stuff you run into, nocturnal surveys. Salamanders are just out running around. Porcupines, in the day you might see one in a tree just kind of snoozing, but at nighttime they're out prowling around and you run into them. It's pretty cool. Not physically, thankfully, but they're around. And then last 2024, I guess, I worked for the Forest Service doing spotted owls again. Um, and this was pretty cool. It was playback surveys mostly again, but we worked a bit with goshawks as well and a little bit with great gray owls. And this was from spring through fall of 2024. And really what they're doing with the Forest Service, the reason they do these sensitive species surveys is to see whether they can cut trees, they can thin in these sensitive areas at that time or not. And then also it was cool. I never did any mammal work before, but got into some camera trapping. So that was interesting. Here's the California spotted owl. It's another subspecies of the spotted owl. They're at this time more threatened probably from barn owls than logging, although I think the issues are kind of intertwined there for sure. But yeah, this is a pretty sensitive species. The future does not look super awesome for the California spotted owl. That's why we do these surveys and protect the habitat. Great grays, these are an amazing species. They're our largest owl by wingspan and length. They don't actually weigh all that much. They have a ton of feather, but they're a really special species to get your eyes on and to find nests. You can see their chick over there on the left and a snag, super goofy, kind of puppet looking owl. And then goshawks. They're pretty incredible to work with. We did playback surveys for them as well. So instead of being out at night playing calls, we were actually just walking around in the daytime. And they're super vocal. So if you're anywhere near the nest, whether you play a call or not, they're going to let you know that they are there. Camera trapping, some of the coolest pics we got. Two mountain lions. I think the one on the bottom left is pretty pregnant to me, but I'm not an expert on that sort of thing. And then gray fox was a pretty common sighting in the Sierra, but another cool experience, another stepping stone to where I am now. Just crazy plants and animal species in California. The variety is really incredible. Again, kind of similar to New Mexico in that vein, but the sequoias and the scorpions and rubber boas up in the mountain where you wouldn't expect. It was a pretty cool time. And now here we are at the Owl Research Institute. I've been here since last March, so going on a year in about a couple days here, 4 or 5 days. The Owl Research Institute was founded by Denver Holt on the left here. He's pretty famous in the bird and raptor world, especially. His work on snowy owls is pretty cool. We've been 38 years he's been doing this with the Owl Research Institute and longer than that on his own. And then that's him and Steve on the other side. So Steve has been a member of the organization for 25 years. He's president of our board, and he's turned into a pretty actually prominent pygmy owl researcher as well. But he started off, he's a retired heart surgeon. And then him and Denver met. I think Steve bought a day in the field with Denver. They went out and they trapped long-eared owls actually, which you can that's what they're holding in that picture as well. And Steve loved it. He bought in to the Owl Research Institute. He thought it was great, stuck around, and he's made kind of a second career out of it now. So now I'm just going to go through and work go through all the various species that we work with, uh, and that I've worked with personally. But we'll start off with the great gray owl. I don't work as much with them personally. It's pretty cool little video for you here. And the great gray owl, we use snags a lot. That's a lot of what our research here is looking for is what are the nest site characteristics that they're using. So these snags might take 200-300 years to grow big enough to support a great gray. And then who knows how long before they actually break. And they have to break in a manner that suits the owl. So with a bowl deep enough for them to kind of hang out in and incubate their eggs. They'll also use stick nests, and then I think 4% of our nests that we've found ever have been in mistletoe. So those big mistletoe clumps that have to be pretty big for a great gray to get in there, but they do. And that's a lot of what our research with great grays is on. But we also take measurements, we visit nests. And again, this is the really exciting part of the research is to interact with the chicks and the adults, but just the owls in general. Um, and you can see why people say they kind of look like puppets. Just that goofy, fuzzy, fuzzy build to them. And this one kind of looking like he's walking a balance beam. When they jump out of the nest, they can't actually fly. They outgrow the nest. They jump out, hit the ground, and then they climb up these leaning branches. And we found that territories that have a lot of these leaning branches are actually kind of selected for, we think, or they're at least important to the survival of the babies. It gets them up off the ground, something for them to camouflage with while they grow old enough to fly. Moving on, short-eared owls, they're all cool species, but this is one of our grassland birds. Um, they nest and roost out in just grassland fields. You would never know they were there in the day unless you get close enough to flush one. And that's kind of what a lot of looking for them is. There's actually a crew just got back maybe 30 minutes ago from doing this. So we spread out in a line, maybe 10 people, 5 to 10 people across the field and 100 feet apart. And then you walk straight line, keep a level line, and walk your way across the field. A lot of times in Montana, you're going through deep snow and stuff, but the owls are just roosting on the ground. And the cool thing about these species is that they roost communally. So I have, I think, a little bit of that here for you.
Head in that. Well,
Ignore the audio, maybe. So all those owls flushing off the ground are short-eared owls. I think she ends up counting 17 of them, which is not unusual at all. We've had roosts of up to, I think, 100 owls together in the same spot. Oops. And they're really pretty. They're really unique as far as sitting on the ground. And that communal roosting behavior is really interesting. Cool enough that we wondered what the reasoning was. So we went ahead and put some cameras out in areas where we know they are. And then we just looked for kind of interactive behavior. In the short ear owls, we got some cool footage like this. Um, maybe. Yeah. Close cousin is the long-eared owl. This is a species Denver has worked with, I think, the longest. These and snowy owls, he has just massive data sets. But if you noticed, the Asio, the genus name, is shared with the short-eared owl. They're pretty close cousins, and they share a lot of the same behaviors and tendencies. Although the long-eared owl roosts in trees, and they have the camouflage to match. So in the top left, you can see what a little communal roost of long-eared owls looks like. They bunch up. It's the winter time, so they're a little fluffy at that point, but they hang out in groups, and it's really cool to see. Seeing one owl is awesome. A lot of people, only see one or two owls in their life, but to be crawling through some brush and look up and make eye contact with, 6 to 10 to 20 owls at one time is pretty special. And they're a really neat medium-sized owl. They're really pretty. We study them in the breeding season as well. So that picture in the top middle, that's me, Haley, and Gabriella. That's kind of our current team right now outside of Denver and Gina. But just taking some of our measurements. Actually, I think I'm looking at the color right there. So if we jump down to the bottom right, you can see the color difference in a male and a female long-eared owl. So the female just averages a lot darker on those underwing coverts, and you can see some black spotting along the edge as well. And that's something that kind of that Denver quantified as well. That was a big part of his early research. And then the top right, that's a chick, so that's a breeding season survey. And you saw a little bit, I think, of that video that played. They're neat. They do this defensive posture where they really puff up their body, they spread their wings out. And what happened in that video is a Cooper's hawk came in, which although they are similar size, that's a potential predator for a long-eared owl. And so what he does is makes himself look huge, maybe more like a great horned owl. And seeing it in person, it can actually be kind of intimidating. You wouldn't think so for an owl of their size. They're not very big. They're pretty gentle when you have them in hand, but they can make themselves seem pretty threatening when they want to. Solid owl, we kind of touched already. Um, we don't like to call owls cute, really. We try to be professional about it, I guess, but you can't not call the solid owl cute. I mean, it's tiny. It's got the proportions, those big eyes. Um, and there you can see. So we study these in the breeding season a lot. These pictures on the left is from a nest we followed from hatching until fledging the whole year. So when they're born, I mean, I reached in to a nest for the first time last year and pulled one of these out, and I'd seen them on pictures before, but I never actually saw one up close. So when I reached in and touched it, I hardly believed it. And then pulling it out was just incredible. And then the chicks, the fledglings are so cute with the dark brown head and the caramel kind of body. But that's a full grown owl right there. They're not in their adult plumage yet, but you can see this one on the right in the hand. That's really as big as they're gonna get. And they're cavity nesters, so they nest in woodpecker holes or occasional branch breaks that decay enough for them to kind of get in there and use as a nest. So a lot of pictures we have are of these owls sticking their head out of the hole, and that's what I've done a lot over the past year is looking for these nests. And you run around with a good sturdy stick and you whack any tree with a nice looking cavity. And then if there's a sawet in there, we think 90% of the time she's gonna just stick her head out and look down at you, which is a pretty indescribable feeling, really, especially when you've hit, a couple hundred trees already in the day with no success. And then seeing her shuffle out and stick her head down and look at you is a pretty special feeling. But these are a really common owl, really. We didn't know that for a long time, but as research on them has progressed, their population is great. And they're one of the more studied owls in recent years because of their migratory behavior. So fall saw-whet banding stations are now common across the United States. There's a ton out east. There's more and more popping up every year in the Mountain West. Um, and what we do, so we've been doing this a while, and it's still an awesome way to collect data on the owls, but we use it a lot for education and outreach purposes because they are such a beautiful owl, and it really people really connect with them. And they're not threatening at all. So, we have kids release them and stuff. But we use this time to kind of show off our organization and give talks on adaptations and things. The top right is a goofy little sheet where it's the amount of facial white is scored from 1 to 3, but you can see kind of the different personalities that they show from time to time. Surprised to looking kind of grumpy or inquisitive, but they're an awesome bird. They're one of my favorite ones to work with. Their close cousin, the boreal owl. This is one of the least seen owls um, in the United States for sure. Bird watchers who are really into to their lists and things, this is one of the last ones they get, and it's in the same genus with the saw-whet owl. Although the saw-whet is native to North America only, while the boreal owl is pretty circumpolar in distribution. So they're well studied in Europe from a lot of nest box studies, and that's what we do with them as well. We have, I think, 25 nest boxes up at higher elevation. And so we go through and check those every year, and it's the same thing. You whack the tree, and if there's one in there, they'll peek their head out and look at you. The nest boxes are pretty high, so when you get one, climbing that ladder up there can be a little sketchy at times, but that's what you got to do to get the chicks out. And again, this is one we study from hatching to fledging. They don't quite have that super cuteness as the saw-whet does, I guess. They look a little goofier, even a little scary maybe at that bottom chick picture. But they're pretty cool, and there's a lot to be learned about them. Recently, what I've been working on is we cleared out all the boxes and pulled the contents out. I went through all of them and I picked out all the bones. So that these pictures on the right, those baggies, those are all full of bones that I picked out of the boxes. And there's one in my hand. I think the next slide will zoom you in a little bit there, but those are all mandibles. You can see that's a decent sized bag, all full of these vole mandibles, essentially, and among other species, but um that's what they eat. But I'm gonna have to go, I have them sitting over beside me right now. At some point I'm gonna have to go through and identify, measure, and count all the bones that we have, which like we said earlier, we're going to get some rain out here, I believe. So, rainy day activities. Uh, Moving on, the northern pygmy owl. That's our smallest owl. This is the one I mentioned Steve works with a ton. Super cool. Pretty unique among owls. At least around here, they lack a lot of the silent flight adaptations that most of our owls have, and that's because they hunt largely during the day, chasing birds and small mammals, or more, I guess, dawn and dusk, but they're not a nocturnal owl like a lot of our other ones are. And how I worked with them last year is again nest monitoring for the most part. So that's a cool video that shows you our peeper cam. So that's a camera on a telescoping pole that we can stick up a few feet and into the nest cavity to record, yeah, laying dates and hatching dates for the eggs, as well as development of the chicks. So we follow this one um, from incubation. Well, we followed from the first egg laid all the way until they were about to fledge. Unfortunately, that nest failed right as they were gonna fledge, which was pretty upsetting for us. But um, that's the nature of it sometimes. And snowy owls. So this is a cool one. We get them in Montana sporadically, but what Denver is pretty famous for is going up into the Arctic and studying them on their breeding grounds. He has some of the longest data sets in the world, and it's a pretty incredible place where study site is in Utqiagvik or Barrow, Alaska. So it's the northernmost point in Alaska. It's like a 100 square mile area, and he's been studying snowy owls there for over 30 years. I was lucky enough to get up there. Unfortunately, they haven't bred in 3 years because of consistent low lemming numbers, and that's something that we have a huge data set on lemmings as well. So um, we found that snowy owls are pretty driven by lemmings as far as breeding success. And again, they're a really cool owl. Looking at them, they're majestic. When they're babies, they are just so goofy looking. I mean, the little gray chicks, and then when they start molting in their flight feathers, it's something else. But, here's some pictures from when I went up there. There was a couple males hanging out, so we did work on Haley's flushing distance data. So what she was doing is seeing, and this has been collected for a number of years, but she's writing it up and still going through with collection is do females on nests flush? So do they fly when approached sooner than males do? So we still got to go out there and look for some owls and chase after them a little bit, which is what we love to do. We have polar bear track in the top right. We were lucky enough to see a polar bear there towards the end, pretty close. It was a really cool look. Um, the first sunset, technically, that was as dark as it got the whole time we were up there for a little over a month. Seeing ice on the ocean, that was a first for me. Uh, just incredible. And that's me walking out on the tundra. And I included this one. You can't really see, but you can see the little dots following me. And when it's not windy up there, the bugs can just be out of this world bad. Oh, that was a swarm of a couple hundred followed me and Haley. We hiked like 8 miles that day. So you didn't really want to stop or they'd catch up with you. And then Western Screech Owl, this is what I've done a lot of my research on, or the project that I've been kind of spearheading. So this is one that Denver hasn't worked with a lot in the past. Uh, they're pretty hard to find nests for. The Western Montana is a little bit fringe range for them, but finding actual natural nests in wild habitats is tough, but they are pretty commonly nesting in people's backyards and things in nest boxes. They take to readily. So that's where a lot of the studies have come from. But I've been working pretty hard at finding actual natural cavities. Again, these are cavity nesting owls, so woodpecker holes or natural branch breaks. And I don't have a ton of research photos for you because we don't find a lot, but um, there's an adult pair and a chick they fledged last year, which is pretty cool, and then some peeper cam footage from the nest as well. And this goes back into kind of what our research has been focusing on a lot recently is snag conservation, so dead tree management basically, and working towards having landowners keep these dead trees on their property because having a lot of different age classes and yeah, characteristics of trees is super important because we have our saw-whets, pygmies, and screeches. Orioles as well are all obligate cavity nesters. They need a woodpecker or branch break cavity to successfully nest, and then great grays are the big draw, but they use those big snags that need again hundreds of years to grow. But all these species require dead trees with woodpecker holes, so require woodpeckers. But um, we find that it's a good tie-in to just um, yeah, espousing full ecological management of forest stands. And I ran through that a little quick, but we'll have plenty of time for questions, I guess. Thank you to our photographers. A lot of those were my pictures, but the ORI ones were mostly these four. Um, so questions.
Oh my God, I love that last
Yeah.
slide. Thank you so much, Zach.
Good.
I took some
I
notes.
can, yeah, I can leave this up. We can, I was worried about going too long. I think I went a little too quick, but we can jump back and revisit some slides
No
as well.
worries.
But
We'll open up to questions. If
Yeah.
folks have questions, feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like, or you can also post them in the chat. I'll wait a few minutes or seconds before I bombard you with my questions. He's got a nice comment in the chat. Nice work,
Oh,
Zach. These photos
yeah.
and
Thank.
videos were great.
Yeah, I can't take credit for a lot of the cool videos. That was other
Oh,
than those grainy peeper cam photos I mentioned of the owls in the nest cavity. But
it's wild.
yeah, we're lucky to work with a lot of great photographers as well. So that's been
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, it sounds like so I'll dive into a question. So kind of from kind of going into college and getting into this work, I mean, you've sound like you've had a lot of really, really great experiences.
Yeah.
Um, I I mean, I'm sure this is going to be a hard question to answer, but do you have like a most like memorable like field experience or story, whether related to Owl and your work with Owl, or maybe even something that happened that was just memorable for you?
I think the one, it's been a couple years now, but in my New Mexico job, we had a mountain lion walk out in front of us, just kind of like early evening, so still pretty broad daylight. And as far as
Wow.
something being like burned into my memory, that was one of the coolest things I'd ever seen. We got such a good look at it. It was,
That's
but
that's wild.
all the owl stuff is amazing. Going up to the Arctic and working with snowies was incredible. Seeing them out on the tundra, and then the polar bear was awesome. I haven't seen a grizzly in Montana yet, but I got
Okay.
to see a polar bear first. Um,
That's kind of cool. That's kind of cool.
but yeah,
Ooh.
the mountain lion I think was my favorite memory.
Oh yeah. I
Um,
I I can see how that could be a memorable
yeah,
experience
and
for
it
sure.
wasn't scary. It wasn't aggressive or anything. We were in a group, and it cruised away. It wasn't
Oh, that's good.
interested in us. It was just getting out of the way.
Nice.
Surprising finds,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. Um, I had. So this is a story I've been telling recently. I was measuring some saw-whet nest cavities last year. This isn't really a find, but so you saw the ladder. I was 30 feet up a ladder measuring a nest cavity, and I heard some clicking from inside this hole. Oh, that insects, or I couldn't put a finger on
Yeah.
what it was. And then right as I kind of started to put it together, a dozen bats flew out of the hole right
What?
around my head.
Oh
And then,
no.
I didn't shriek.
But you
Yeah,
didn't?
no, I did. I definitely let out some noise.
Okay.
Yeah, and then but I had two more to do. So I climbed back down the ladder, I got my measurements. I went back down, hiked the ladder out. The next point, I'm throwing my leg over some barbed wire fence. And as I'm putting my foot down, I see a rattlesnake coil up and it rattled at me. I got 6 inches from putting my foot right on top of it.
Whoa.
So then that obviously I jumped backwards, yelped a little, but the snake went on its way. I had to go down that hill and measure that cavity up the ladder, and then I had one more to do. So walking in, I was like, "Yeah, this is it." It went
Come at me. I've
right
got everything
fine.
already.
Yeah, there's no bear waiting for me in the
That's
brush.
good.
But yeah, we find a lot of cool stuff. And then I'm interested in a lot of plants and mushrooms and reptiles and things too. So that's always fun. Even when you're doing night surveys, I think the surprising finds are just seeing some of the species that are out there that you never really think of as nocturnal.
Yeah.
Just yeah, like salamanders everywhere, porcupines I mentioned before. Um, and then going way out in the field, you get your eyes on, you get to see a lot of cool carcasses, bones, sheds, and things. But yeah,
That's awesome. Listen, got a
yeah.
two-parter question here. So, do you have a favorite species of owl? And then the second question, kind of related but unrelated to that, is do you have any recommendations for what folks can do to help support owl populations, even small things in their own communities or backyards that might help?
Yeah, totally. I mean, my favorite owl species, I guess, I like the eastern screech. I'm working with western screeches right now, so it's close enough, but they're cool. I don't know if you're familiar. They have like a gray and a red
Ooh,
color morph, so they're pretty cool. They're neat. Um, and recommendations to support owls. As I mentioned, the this a lot of these owls use cavities to nest in.
yeah.
So what a ton of people do is nest boxes. So screech owls will they don't care if it's in someone's backyard. If you have a little bit of habitat, maybe you don't have big trees that have natural nest cavities, but throwing up a nest box is great. A
Hmm.
lot of species will use them, but owls in particular need them. Yeah, and then just, supporting local nonprofits and things is probably the other most important part. But there's a lot of cool volunteer opportunities as well. I know, like saw-whet migration is a pretty popular thing for a lot of
Hmm.
people. I mean, we do open visitor nights every Friday where, we'll have 30 random people just come and see what we do. That's a pretty common thing across the United States as well. If you're looking to interact anyway.
Yeah, follow-up question that kind of sparked that for me is migration. And again, excuse my ignorance, but do owls migrate? Are they like migratory species?
Yeah, so a lot of them have like pretty strong seasonal movements.
Okay.
Um, it's hard to say that they have like a strict migration, like
Yeah.
something like a Swainson's hawk or warblers, where they're going. The whole population goes from point A to point B every year.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Pretty little variation in that. Um, a lot of our owls, so long-eared owls, saw-whet owls, short-eared owls, um, even snowies. Probably missing some other species as well, but they have pretty significant winter movements where um, they kind of trend generally south in a lot of areas,
Uh,
but sometimes east-west.
mm,
The short-eared owls we found. I think Denver has had band recoveries from here back on the East Coast in like Massachusetts. Um,
wow.
so yeah, not necessarily like a seasonal
Mm,
big
mhm.
migration, but we call it a migration because I mean, it is a season
Movement.
back and forth, but it's not as distinct maybe as a lot of other
Okay.
raptor and songbird species.
Okay. That makes sense. Got to check with the family, check with the community, see where they want to post up next.
Yeah.
Check in with
Yeah.
the fam.
And
Like,
like
where you guys want to go?
the Southwest, we find it's almost all females or hatchier males,
Uh,
some young ones.
okay.
So we think the males, the theory is they're staying behind on the nest site, and there's enough prey to support a male through the winter. But most of the females and the young move elsewhere, generally south because the weather's better, more available prey. But
Hmm. That makes sense. Interesting. Oh, it looks like we got one question here in the chat. Oh, I don't know what this acronym stands for, but I think Angelica does. Did you find any MSOs in New Mexico forests?
oh yeah,
Wait,
that's
what
the
are MSOs? What's
oh
that?
Mexican spotted owl.
Oh, okay. There we go. There we go.
Yeah, yeah, we did. Did I don't know. Did you work for the Forest Service or were you with the PCR crew, Angelica?
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, I did it with the Bird Conservancy
Oh, did you? Yeah.
in 2019, and I didn't do the New Mexico forests, but the group that did, I don't think had any sightings. I think they had one. Um, they heard a potential pair individual, and then when they went to go mouse, they could not find it, and it was a whole
Mm.
thing, the whole season that there wasn't any MSOs in New Mexico. So I was just curious uh, if you detected any in
Yeah,
the
we had a
forest.
lot. We had them in every forest I think we visited. Um, not most of our sites probably had point or had owls, but we definitely, especially farther north in like the Taos range, we got quite a few detections. And then west, we were in the Gila a little bit too, so
Yeah.
there's a ton out there. But yeah, we did pretty well, I think.
Okay. Just
I don't know,
curious.
maybe there's a change in protocol or
Mhm.
something between then and now. I'm not sure. Maybe they're on the upswing, hopefully. Yeah.
One question here. Any recommendations or advice to share with people who want to get into this field or something similar?
Yeah, you kind of I got lucky with the Mexican spotted owl getting the job. Because I didn't really have experience and she trusted that I would be fine. And it was tough. It was a tough job, but you gotta kind of take what you can get for a little bit and then just build your experience however you can. Volunteering, I've done a lot of volunteering just for no money for a while in the off season and stuff. But yeah, and then just making connections with people too helps, I think, as well. It's a small world. Once you find, I guess, the one you want to be in, people tend to know each other. So
Oh, definitely. Yeah, conservation is a big kind of industry, if you will, but really the worlds are quite small within it. And someone knows someone who knows someone that
there
might
you
be
go.
interested in what you do. That's something when I was in my marriage, I would tell folks to advocate for yourself, talk about your dreams, talk about them with anyone in the office who might be interested because you don't know who they know. You don't
Yeah.
know what connections they might have and how they can help you along your path.
Yeah, I think like passion is probably the most important thing to have as far as applying to the jobs because like the tech jobs, no one cares if you actually know anything.
Mhm.
You kind of just need legs but if you like it, they know you're not gonna quit and you're gonna do a good job and you're gonna enjoy doing
Yeah,
it. So I don't think trying to flaunt your experience at the beginning is probably not the way to go necessarily. Not that it's not important or, you know,
of course.
like handling and stuff takes a long time to get decent at. But
It's really cool. Any other questions from our audience? Studies show it takes 12 seconds for someone to say something. I think I heard that on a TED Talk once. Awesome. Well, with that, Zach, thank you so very much for joining ACE today on another session of ACE Learns. Excuse me. I know I learned a lot and I took down some notes, and I'm gonna definitely Google some of these owls because the saw-whet like are just cute. I just want to squeeze them and just want to love them.
hard to believe.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, very, very cool. Thank you so much again, Zach. Really appreciate
Cool.
you
Thank you.
coming.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks. See ya.